So we're going to jump right into our speakers for the afternoon. So first off, we have the lovely Natasha Swift. And Natasha is a certified professional life coach. Okay, so these are heavyweights sitting here, well experienced in their field. She's also an internationally trained parent-child coach. Okay, parent-teenager. Oh, so teenagers are your expertise. Okay. And basically, I'm going to let her do most of the talking. I've learned not to do too long of an introduction with the speakers and kind of just get to the nitty-gritty. But Natasha is also currently studying towards her bachelor's degree in psychology. And today she's going to unpack a little bit about two programs that she's been working on. So I think you'll see from her session that these programs are well developed. She's been seeing results. And so it is not just some theory-based work. It is very much practical-based. And those are the kinds of speakers we want to bring to you. Okay, so without further ado, Natasha Swift.
So, good afternoon. Goeiemiddag. En molo weni. So, my Afrikaans is nie baie goed nie. En in die tete is die Xhosa kan nee. So while I really do honor the diversity of our country and our multilingualism, I am going to present what I have, the information that I have here today in my mother tongue English, because I feel I'll do the best job in English versus Afrikaans or isiXhosa. Yes, so does everybody here have a pad, that My School pad? Yes. Brilliant. What I'd like you to do is tear out a piece of paper. Okay, so everybody got a piece of paper? Wave it in there. Lovely, thank you. Now please could you crumple it up into a nice tight ball. And once you've done that, I'd like you to open it up and smooth it out. And smooth out all the wrinkles so that that paper looks exactly like it did before you crumpled it up. All right, so has anybody actually been able to manage to smooth out all the wrinkles? No, it's impossible, right? Okay, so imagine that this paper represents bullying and other trauma that our youth experience. So the trauma may end, the bullying may end, but the emotional scars endure, and they can endure for a lifetime. So bullying, it is an international pandemic, and it really is claiming lives of youth around the world. Just last year, Shanae Roberts, a 17-year-old girl from Athlone in Cape Town, she took her life on the 14th of September as a result of having been bullied. So bullying is serious, and so much so that the United Nations, our international peacekeeping force, they started a committee, set up a committee in 2011 for the rights of the child, and they have a subcommittee that looks into how do we deal with bullying, and in particular cyberbullying, and then obviously make recommendations to member states, member governments. So it's so serious that our international peacekeeping force have it on their agenda. Now that said, would you like the good news or the bad news first? Bad news. Okay, I was all prepared for the good news first. Let's give you the bad news first. There's my little slide. Okay, so the bad news is that there is no quick fix to the pandemic of bullying. I wish that I could stand here today and give you a program that you can take back to your schools that's going to magically eradicate bullying. Unfortunately, I can't. The good news is that you are not the only schools. It's not just schools in South Africa that are having to deal with this pandemic of bullying. I'm calling it a pandemic because it is all around the schools. So school principals, school management teams all around the world are having to deal with bullying and look into how do we address it. So while I can't give you a quick fix, what I can do today and what I will do today is look at what actually is bullying. Why is it so prevalent? Why is there such an increase in bullying? Why are we having this conversation today? And then how do we address bullying? And as Samantha mentioned, I'm going to look at 2 projects that I've been working on, one in a primary school and one in a high school, that I feel work towards a solution for bullying. Okay, so bullying, what is it? Well, bullying is distinct from normal conflict. In normal conflict, you have 2 parties and they have an opposing need. And it's common in everyday life. So you see conflict between friends, you see conflict between siblings, between spouses. We even have internal conflict. And whether that conflict is serious or minor, we work towards finding a solution for it, and we work with that other party. So we look to find a compromise, a win-win solution. Sometimes we learn to just deal with the conflict. Like if I look into my own life, I don't think my husband, he's never going to be on time, right? So I just learned to live with that. So we work at finding a solution, finding a win-win, a compromise. Now, with bullying, it's something quite different. Because with bullying, there is a perceived imbalance of power, and I say it's a perceived imbalance of power between the more aggressive child and the more passive child. And with bullying, the intention is to inflict pain, inflict either physical or emotional pain. So we've got different types of bullying. We all know this, right? You can physically bully someone, you can emotionally, verbally bully someone, and then we're also seeing, because of technology, we're seeing a rise in cyberbullying. Now, cyberbullying is actually changing the profile of a bully, because so it's not face-to-face. It now can be behind a screen. You can remain anonymous, and as a result, you're a lot braver. And you can become bullies, cyberbullies can be extremely, extremely nasty. It's actually heart-wrenching when we hear stories of the kind of cyberbullying that's going on, and also because it happens on social media platforms that can involve a lot of other children. For instance, just an example: if someone says, posts a picture of me and says Natasha is the ugliest girl in school, well, that can be liked by 500 other kids. And that can be disastrous for a young person. So, bullying also, while it is not currently a crime, that is under discussion at the moment. So, and I know in other parts of the world, in Australia, for instance, they're a bit of ahead of the game in terms of law, and it has been made a crime. And juveniles can get a criminal record for bullying. But if you look at our existing laws, bullying is like a new way of committing an old crime. So existing laws, for instance, we have the Harassment Act. Well, bullying is a form of harassment. Then we have crimen injuria. I'm not sure if I'm pronouncing that correctly, but what that is intentional and serious violation of someone's dignity or privacy. Well, of course, that's what happens with bullying. Then assault. So even if you threaten to assault someone, so if it's threatened or actual, that is a crime. Criminal defamation, hurting someone's reputation publicly, and extortion, blackmail. So it is a new way of committing an old crime, and a very easy way to remember or to distinguish bullying from other kind of conflict is with the acronym RIP, rest in peace, which it kind of says it all. But so the first one is that it has to be repetitive. So it's not a once-off someone being nasty to someone else. A lot of parents will phone and say, so-and-so has been bullying my child. Well, because they were mean or did something nasty that day, It has to be repetitive. So it's happening over a period of time. It's intentional. As I said, the intention is to inflict pain, physical or emotional, and there has to be a power imbalance, a perceived power imbalance. So RIP, repetitive, intentional, and power imbalance. So that's what bullying is. Why is bullying so prevalent? So I believe that bullying is a reflection of what is happening in our society today. So if you look at a post-apartheid democratic society, it's very different to 20 years ago or 30 or 40 years ago when we were all growing up. Today you have technology, life's fast pace, widespread poverty, domestic and criminal violence. Families are breaking up at a higher rate, and that is just the tip of the iceberg. Added to that, peer pressure has become intense. We see alcohol binge drinking on the increase, drug taking on the increase. Sexual activity is happening at very young ages. We hear reports at Life Talk of 10-year-olds being sexually active. Along with that, increase in teen pregnancies. Pornography is viewed regularly with children as young as 8 years old. Gangsterism in our communities, violence in our communities. It's not uncommon that a young person has seen someone shot dead in front of them. HIV and non-communicable diseases are wreaking havoc on people's lives, and childhood-headed households are a lot more common than what we realize. So what is the result? The result is that a large majority of our youth are traumatized to some degree or other, and they are struggling to deal with the challenges that they are faced with. And what are we seeing? So we're seeing decreased academic performance, increased school dropout, extremely concerning antisocial behavior such as bullying, and an increase in depression. Depression is one of the highest growing mental health disorders in our country, and we see the highest growth in the 14 to 18 age category, and along with that, suicide. If you are a depressed teen, you're more likely to commit suicide. And if you are a depressed teen, you're vulnerable to being a victim of bullying. And a depressed, bullied teen is more likely to commit suicide. Now, interestingly, if you look at the profile of the bully and the victim, they actually mirror each other. So both bully and victim are traumatized and marginalized somewhere else in their life, and what makes them different is how they choose to act out. So it's that human fight or flight response that we have. So the bully will fight and act out aggressively and bully another child. So they're both traumatized and marginalized, and as a result they feel powerless. So what makes them different is how they respond to that feeling of powerlessness. So the bully is going to act out and try gain some sense of power, and the victim is going to withdraw into a depression. So then, how do we address bullying? So I said I'm going to take you through two projects that I've worked on. The one I did in the first 2 terms of this year, called the Be Kind campaign, that ran in a primary school, and they were specifically addressing bullying. So we were called in to specifically look at how do we address bullying in the school. And the second one is a high school program that's currently running. It launched in May this year and January this year. Sorry, the launch event was in May, but the actual program kicked off in January this year and is running for 5 years. So it's a 5-year pilot program, which I will take you through. So the Be Kind campaign, there's a fabulous TED Talk by South African executive coach called Dale Williams, and he talks about the power of positivity, how positivity affects performance and behavior. And he cites this example by a developmental psychologist called Elizabeth Hurlock. And what she did was she took 2 groups of students and she gave them quite a complicated maths sum to solve. And then she gave the 2 groups feedback, but she gave the feedback differently. To the one group, she told them everything that they had done wrong. To the other group, she told them everything that they had done right. Now, the group that were told everything they'd done wrong, next time improved by 19%. So how much do you think the group that did well improved by? Maybe 40%, 50%, double? Try a staggering 71%. So, before I move on, this also relates to parenting and to education, to how we talk to our children. So often we focus on the negative. We tell them what we don't want them to do. I hear myself doing it, like my son who's 4 years old. I hear him. I watch him climbing a tree and I hear myself saying, "Be careful, you're going to fall." And what's he focusing on? Falling. Versus saying, "Be careful, my boy, watch where you put your feet." Or "Look what you're doing." So now he's focusing on, I must be careful and watch where I put my feet. So taking this notion, or following on from this notion, what we did was we turned bullying on its head. And we decided to focus on what we wanted the learners to do more of versus less of. And what we wanted them to do more of was be kind to each other versus be mean to each other. And what we said, okay, we want to create a perception shift in the school, a perception or a culture shift, that it is cool to be kind. Now, if we want them to change their behavior from being mean to being kind, you have to have a perception shift. If there's no shift in perception, there's no change in behavior. And I'll give you an example that we can all relate to. Smoking. 20, 30 years ago, it was perfectly acceptable to smoke in public places. In fact, I don't know if 20 years ago, maybe 20 years ago, someone might be smoking in this auditorium. You know, it was okay to smoke in the cinema. It was okay to smoke on an airplane. When I go on an airplane, I actually shudder that someone could be sitting there. You know, we see the old ashtrays. Anyway, so it was acceptable because we didn't understand how unhealthy smoking was. I mean, I think 50 years ago, Peter Stuyvesant ad was like the sergeant, or the Dr. General or whatever smokes Stuyvesant. So we didn't have that perception that it's bad for you and that secondhand smoke is bad for you. Now that we have that, nobody smokes anywhere. So that perception changed our behavior. So we wanted to create a change in behavior that it's cool, a perception shift that it's cool to be kind. How do we do that? Firstly, we first identified that we need to develop the learner's emotional intelligence. Now, we hear emotional intelligence being bandied about all the time, this term. What actually is it? How do we define it? So in its essence, it's being able to identify and feel one's emotions, and so one's own and another's emotions, and be able to manage them, not become overwhelmed by them. And why is that important? Well, because children with a solid emotional intelligence, they're going to have a greater self-awareness, and they're going to be more empowered to deal with the challenges that come their way. They're not going to be having that sense of feeling powerless in their lives, and therefore they are less likely to act out or to withdraw and become victims. So we worked with the grades 6 and 7s very closely. I went into their LO classes over 7 sessions. Those 7 sessions actually ran over 2 terms, which was quite useful because there were a bit of gaps in between when exams came up, etc., which allowed time for integration. And what did we look at? So, firstly, how do we manage one's emotions? So, being able to say, okay, I'm feeling X because of Y. We looked at assertive communication. I think, I feel, I need. So I think I don't like it when you're being mean to me. I feel sad or I feel hurt, and what I need is for you to stop. And being able to communicate that assertively. So also looking at our physicality. How do we stand when we communicate assertively? We also spent a lot of time understanding negative self-talk and how to manage our negative self-talk so that it doesn't manage us. And I was amazed at how these kids understood, got, and integrated what I was speaking to them about. Then I ran Life Talks Tug of Life methodology with all the grades, so across the whole school. And this methodology is fundamentally about supporting a young person to learn how to make a wise choice in the face of challenge. It doesn't come naturally to us necessarily. When I talk about adolescence and what's going on in the brain, that'll make more sense, but it is a skill that's learned. And it's a really fun methodology that engages them, and it gets them to look at 2 things. What are my goals? What do I want to achieve? And also, what's my goal person? So the goal person is, what do I value? What kind of person? What are the characteristics that describe the kind of person I would be proud to be in the world? And then, whenever they're faced with a decision, whenever they've got a choice to make, the question to ask themselves, is making this choice going to take me closer to or further away from achieving my goals and being my goal person? So a very simple decision-making skill that they can use. And I know, it's not as simple as that, but at least it equips them with something when they're in that moment faced with the decision. So we ran that with the grades. And then along with that, we did Be Kind Talks, what I call Be Kind Talks. So here we spoke about the value of kindness, and we looked into what does it actually mean to be kind. Like, I can say be kind, but what does it mean for you to be kind? What does it mean for you to be kind? It might look different for everybody else. So we got into the nitty-gritty of kindness, and it was a very inspiring, emotive talk. I brought in celebrities, what are celebrities saying about kindness, and really had a fantastic dialogue with the kids. And at the end of that, they were then invited to sign a Be Kind pledge. And when they signed the Be Kind pledge, they received a little armband that said it's cool to be kind, which they wore to school every day. So now they've been empowered with some emotional and social skills. They've been inspired around the value of kindness. They've signed their pledge. They've taken ownership of it. They've got their armband. And the next thing was to give them the opportunity to live kindness. So we ran the Be Kind campaign. And that was over 3 months. And each month was a different task around being kindness. So the first one was random acts of kindness. So we introduced what random acts of kindness were, so they had a good understanding. And then they were tasked to go out into their communities and in the school and randomly be kind to somebody for no other reason than just to be kind. And then they were asked to share their stories with us, write us letters, and there was a post box that they could put it in. And every week, like 4 or 5 of the best stories, or the ones that stood out the most, were read in assembly, and those kids were acknowledged. And just that, just to be acknowledged for having been kind was such an amazing thing for them. And I was actually blown away about how I thought, how are they going to engage? Are they going to take this on? And that post box was jam-packed every week with letters. So we did random acts of kindness. Then the next month was Be a Buddy, Not a Bully. So they were encouraged to step out of their usual circles and go find someone that they don't normally talk to and befriend them and get to know them and find out similarities and differences and again share their stories. And again, they were rewarded on a weekly basis. And then the last month we did be an upstander, not a bystander. When we look at bullying, the victim and the bully are really the smaller group. The bigger group are the bystanders. So being the bigger group, they have the most amount of power. And we encourage them to actually, inspire them to the fact that they can actually do something about it, and don't just watch it. Stand up and do something about it. So we spoke about how you can become an upstander. So gave them practical tools of how to shift from being a bystander to an upstander, and again asked them to share their stories. And that is the Be Kind campaign, and that is how we did it. There were some other elements that went along with it. So we had some support material. At the entrances to the schools, we put posters that said, you are now entering a Be Kind zone. And we did a talk to the parents, supporting them on how do they support their children who are being bullied or who are bullies. How do they encourage their children to come in with stories about other kids that have been bullied or victims? How do they stand up? How do they become upstanders? And then also we did a talk with the educators to get their buy-in to the program. And there were a lot of amazing things actually that happened outside of what I'm telling you here. Like the staff took it on their own accord to start they called it an angel network, and they were each given someone anonymously to be kind to over the period of the year, and then at the end they're going to acknowledge it's still running. Then they will acknowledge who their angel was. Things like that went on. What was recommended and not implemented. So we said, change your anti-bullying policy to a Be Kind policy. Let's talk about what we want them to do, not what we don't want them to do. And the recommendation was that we got the school management team and the peer mediators together to brainstorm and come up with that Be Kind policy so that the learners felt like they were a part of it and could have some ownership around it. It didn't happen, and sadly it's time, and just I know what goes on in schools, all nice ideas, and then sometimes we just run out of the time. So so it was change your anti-bullying policy to a Be Kind policy, involve the peer mediators, and then the peer mediators would have been tasked to implement that and to find people who were transgressing it. And when a learner transgressed the Be Kind policy, instead of being punitive, let's focus on restorative justice. So restorative justice, I call the 3 C's. So The first C is consequence. So if you have broken the policy, there has to be a consequence. And let that consequence be something constructive. So maybe it's school community service versus sitting for an hour in detention. So consequences, and then get curious. Why are they behaving badly? What's at the source of their behavior? Maybe they speak to a counselor. The peer mediator is trained to find out what's actually going on in their lives. Why are they behaving like this? And correction. Support them to understand how they should behave in the future. Yeah. I could go on about that, but I won't. And then put learners in a positive state of mind. So examples there. So every day, like maybe the educator is telling the kids one good thing, one good character quality that they see in them, or have quotes on the whiteboard when they walk up in the day, or have a pad of sticky notes and have a Be Kind post, whatever. Like Be Kind board, and if one child does something really kind to another child, then they can share that. They can say, so-and-so is just the bestest friend because she helped me with my maths homework, or whatever it is, So they're acknowledging when they're doing things right. Acknowledge when they're doing right, not only when they're doing wrong. I think there's that saying, if you say one negative thing, you've got to say 5 positive things to counteract or to balance it out. All right. What was the effectiveness of this campaign? So I'm told, I'm just looking at my time, perfect. I'm told that bullying did reduce during the campaign. And we know that as well because they have a bully box, and there were less letters and less complaints about bullying and less parents phoning in complaining. However, I question whether it would have been sustainable. What I did with the grade 6 and 7s, they got it and they integrated while I was there, over those 7 weeks. But if you don't reinforce it over a long period of time, we lose it. So I question whether it would have been sustainable outside the duration of the project, and I feel that had they implemented the Be Kind policy and the peer mediators and some of those things that I've just been through that weren't implemented, that would have supported the sustainability of the project and had this idea of Be Kind and the value of kindness integrate into the school culture, because that's really what would have been necessary for it to be sustainable. So then next, a project very close to my heart. It's a personal development and life coaching curriculum that we have been tasked with implementing into our high school in Cape Town. And how that looks is we meet with the learners from grade 8 right through to grade 12 once for 40 minutes in a 10-day cycle. It's not a lot, but it's a start. And so we're implementing personal development and life coaching into their LO curriculum. So it has become a part of their LO curriculum. And what is personal development? So personal development is developing a learner's intra and interpersonal skills. So their ability to communicate effectively with themselves as well as others. As a counsellor, I know that the main reason why someone is going to end up in a counselling room is as a result of a breakdown in relationship, either with themselves or with somebody else, and generally it is both. So this is of vital importance to our happiness in life and our functioning in relationships and in society. And the definition of life coaching. Okay, so a very simple definition of life coaching. It's looking at where am I now, where do I want to be, and how am I going to get there? And then these intra and interpersonal skills that are developed through the program are integrated into that learner's life so they can start to see where are they limiting themselves, where are they limiting their own progress, and how can they shift from being in reaction to their circumstances, to being a victim of the things that they don't want to have in their lives, to being in creation of what it is that they do want for their lives. And why is personal development and life coaching relevant to an adolescent? Well, if you look at what is going on in an adolescent, developmentally, what's going on at this time. So I'm going to touch on a few things. Firstly, there's a lot of changes happening in their brain. The prefrontal cortex, which is responsible for our critical thinking and our reasoning, starts to develop. At the same time, the amygdala, which is the seat of our emotions, starts to develop. Now, the scary thing is that the prefrontal cortex starts to develop in adolescence, but it only matures in our mid-20s at about 25. And the amygdala matures a lot quicker. And that is why an adolescent is more likely to make a decision based on emotion than they are based on critical thinking and reasoning. So that's why we see teenagers being so impulsive. And then something else also happens in the brain during adolescence. It's called pruning. So during childhood, we make billions and gazillions and trillions of neural pathways because we're the sponge and we're learning so much. And then in adolescence, whatever we focus on becomes a neural pathway for life, and whatever we don't focus on that we've gained as a child, we lose. So that then is a good reason for us to start talking about how do you make an effective choice. So decision-making skills are biologically critical during adolescence, as well as all the other intra- and interpersonal skills that a young person is going to learn at this time in their development. And if they learn it at this time while the brain is doing that pruning, it will become a powerful habit for life. So we don't have to wait till we're adults and we're having challenges in relationships and blah, 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 and have to unlearn and learn new ways. We actually learned that at a time when our brain was priming us for adulthood. Then on an emotional level, what's happening? Okay, so it's a time of separating out from our parents. It's a time of critically questioning all the values, all the morals, the beliefs that we've been brought up on in our search for identity. So an adolescent is starting to answer, whether they're conscious of it or not, they're starting to answer that, starting to answer that question. Who am I? What do I want out of life? What do I value? Now, what's interesting about that is that the coaching journey is all about answering those questions. So life coaching mirrors and supports that developmental process. And why is that important? Why is it important that we are supporting their developmental process? Let me just get there. Okay. So, developmental psychologists tell us that as we move through the years of our life, we go through various developmental phases. And in each phase, there's what you could call an emotional developmental task to be achieved. So you can see here I've actually listed the different emotional tasks. So as an infant, it's trust versus mistrust. So if the environment supports that baby, so they have the nurturing, they have food, they have a constant caregiver, they've got a routine, everything feels secure, they're going to develop a sense of trust. A trust in the world. This is vital because if they develop mistrust, then they go into their lives and into adult relationships, or they struggle in adult relationships. So that is all formed in the first year of one's life. But I'm going to skip through, I won't go through all of them, but if you can look in adolescence, industry versus inferiority. So it's really important that between 5 and 13, a young person's environment supports them to initiate tasks and to complete tasks. And then 13 to 21, identity versus role confusion. So it's really important that their environment supports them to form their identity, to discover who they are. Now, if the environment does support them, if our environment supports us to achieve these emotional tasks, we grow emotionally. We become more aligned, have a greater sense of self, so more aligned with ourselves, and each task builds on the next, so that ultimately at the end of our life we can look back and be pleased with how we lived our lives, be satisfied with how we lived our lives, and with the legacy that we're leaving behind. So at the very end, though, it's ego integrity versus despair. So we don't look back with a sense of regret. Now, if our environment does not support us to achieve these tasks, what we see happening is that it negatively impacts our self-esteem and our motivation to succeed in life. And ultimately, if we've got a low self-esteem, we are more likely to act out waywardly in life and to make unhealthy, unwise choices. And what do we see with adolescents? So I've already spoken about alcohol, binge drinking, drugs, sex, teen pregnancies, gangsterism, all these things that derail the youth and prevent them from actually completing their education, which is ultimately what we want for them. Okay, so it's important if we want to keep them on track. We want to keep them on track in their lives and making healthy, wise choices that get them to the finish line, get them to matric with an education. So now you might be wondering, what the heck does this all have to do with bullying and trauma? Okay, so what is it? To answer that question, we have to look at what is the real problem, what's the real need, and what's the ultimate solution. While this program doesn't directly address bullying, I believe it's the ultimate solution. You cannot effectively deal with bullying by focusing on bullying alone, because bullying is a part of a much bigger problem. And if you address that bigger problem, not only can you address bullying, but you can address all the other challenges, all the other psychosocial challenges that we see happening amongst our youth. And it's a bit like, instead of working on all the individual leaves of the tree, it's taking that trunk of the tree and shifting the trunk. If you shift the trunk of the tree, you shift all the other little challenges. So what is the problem? The problem is that our youth, to some degree or other, are traumatized, as I've said, and the majority are significantly traumatized, and they are acting out, and they are in developmental crisis because our microenvironments within which they are developing, so home, their communities, and their school environments are not adequately supporting that developmental process. So what's the real need? Support. So I'd say more comprehensively. Of course, there are things that are going on that's supporting their emotional development, but let's look at how can we more comprehensively support a learner's healthy and emotional developmental process. And then secondly, help those in need to process their existing trauma. What's the ultimate solution? Okay, so I believe with every fiber of my being that the reform that is necessary in our schools is to have or to introduce a parallel personal development and life coaching curriculum to our academic curriculum. Because doing so is educating the whole person. It's educating their heads, it's educating their hearts. And when we do this, then we support that developmental process. It's a bit like if we only focus on academics, or if there's a large majority of our focus on academics, it's a bit like teaching only the left side of the body to walk. There's a part of there's the other part of their body that isn't in alignment. And research shows that programs focusing on the promotion of mental and emotional well-being of an adolescent improves their academic performance. Now, that is what we want at schools. We're about academic performance. And if they are emotionally and mentally sound, or emotionally and mentally on track, they will perform better academically. They will have greater resilience as well as motivation to succeed in the face of the challenges that they're faced with. Their self-esteem will grow exponentially, and they are more likely to make life-enriching versus life-destroying choices, and are definitely less likely to bully or be a victim of bullying. Now, okay, here's my piece of paper that I scrumpled up in the beginning. Now imagine if I take a green Koki, a beautiful green Koki, and cover this paper and try and make it look more attractive or more beautiful. The scars still show through. So what am I trying to say by this? We can't develop our emotional intelligence and work preventatively if we are not also addressing the existing or past trauma. And I think, in fact, I know that Claudia is going to talk into what I'm saying right now. We have to be addressing that trauma that already exists at the same time or simultaneously at working preventatively. Because really what I'm speaking about, this life coaching and self-development program, it is working preventatively, right? But there is existing trauma. So we need to be working at healing that trauma and getting that young person to a point where they are able to take responsibility and be accountable for their lives. So working preventatively as well as at a treatment level. Now, I know Claudia is going to make lots of recommendations of how to achieve that. And for now, I say there's huge value in counseling groups and introducing counseling groups into your schools. Counseling or groups, so working with someone therapeutically in a group has been proven to be more effective than one-on-one. And never more so than for an adolescent who naturally want to be in a group. And when you're in a group, you learn vicariously from others, you get support, you feel normalized. So what I'm experiencing, other people are experiencing. You get to have feedback. You get to take the personal development, intro and interpersonal skills that you're learning and practice them in a group. So preventative, life coaching and personal development, treatment, counseling. Won't go on to the next slide. So then to conclude, what is required is that we safeguard our youth through empowering them and supporting their emotional development. Ladies and gentlemen, it is as important as developing their intellect. Life soft skills are, after all, the fertile soil in which those academic hard skills are planted. If our youth, if our learners are not having an ability to self-manage, if they don't have a self-awareness, if they're not able to effectively communicate, those academic skills, more than likely, or there's a high probability that those academic skills are going to fall on thorny ground and never take full root. So, combining the two, academics and personal development, bringing back to my analogy of my paper, it's a bit like laminating the piece of paper, right? The crinkles are still there, but this lamination is like a protection, and it supports the paper not to disintegrate. And it also supports them or protects them from future damage. It empowers them to handle future challenge that comes their way, to be more resilient in the face of that challenge. And here's the thing, as I've already said, our society definitely does not create a safe developmental container. Sadly, many of our homes don't either. And so considering that children are spending the majority of their developmental years at school, our schools have, or your schools have the greatest possibility of being at the center of the community for our children and providing that developmental container for them. And to keep them on track so that they can develop into a full, active citizen. Now, clearly, this takes a lot of human and financial resource. And yeah, so we need buy-in. We need buy-in from the school leaders such as yourselves. We need buy-in from government. We need buy-in from private sector to support and to fund these kinds of programs in schools. And yes, this is our mission, and we are starting one school at a time. So, ladies and gentlemen, thank you very much.
A complete agreement that, you know, if we don't enable curriculum with character, then we have absolutely nothing.
Exactly.
To look forward to.
Exactly. Goosebumps.
So, just to see what you've done with the project, particularly in primary schools. I'm a primary school principal myself. And we started a project called the Virtues Project.
Yes.
And Erickson's psychosocial development theory is the virtues theory.
Yes, exactly.
So primary and secondary virtues that develop and malappropriate because we do not build character. Mm-hmm. And we've been doing it for 6 years. So
wow.
What I want to say is, if you want to visit Balfour Primary School, you're most welcome.
Fantastic.
And maybe just have a look at something that is sustainable. in developing character at schools, and we truly see that it's the enabler. Without it, we are nothing.
That's fantastic,
So,
exactly.
I want you to visit my school. Will you visit my school?
Yes, absolutely. Here's my card, and please do contact me.
Thank you.
Okay,
Thank
great.
Excuse me?
Yes.
How do we get people, especially the department, to change their mindset? There are many things outside that can help our learners. Like we get body talk, brain gym, and those things people see as taboo and they doubt. And it makes us self-doubt as well. So we as teachers, we have to do research, we have to experiment, and we have to break down barriers. Because we are busy creating a society for the future. And we need that emotional, our kids have a lot of baggage. They react emotionally, they either freeze, or they fight, or but they are limited because we have put the limits there. As a society, we have created that because our mindsets are so narrow, and there are things, and we only realize the power of our brain and the power of the mind and positive thinking. So I've been branded sometimes by people as being Satanists and being, just because I believe in energy healing. And I do believe that we are energy. And if you invite negative energy into your life, you become negative. So we have to break down those barriers and get people to think like-minded, to get together and do that for our future, and leave a legacy behind. Because the things that are happening in the world really is so scary. I always say, I wonder how many disorders our future generations are going to have because of what we believe in. We believe in power, we believe in materialism, and we forget that God has created us to be special, and we have that power within us.
Absolutely. Yeah, and I think, you asked how do we get to change mindsets? And I think it's by keeping that conversation alive and understanding that it's not a quick fix and that every conversation that we have builds on the next conversation until we reach that critical mass. So it's, Yes. Hi.
Thank you so much.
Pleasure.
For the presentation.
Thank you.
I especially like your idea about parallel coaching. I think there's something there.
So do we.
Definitely do. I'm from Manenberg, so live there, and I do see value in that. I firmly believe that a lot of the answers are in the actual challenges that we face, and that our challenges are the opportunities in that respect. And I just want to know, is part of the answer not perhaps empowering our educators with a teaching methodology that facilitates healing? Is part of it not how we facilitate the teaching, how we interact, how we engage? That was a big part of my success as a learner. I was the first ever learner that passed matric exam with straight A's at Manenberg Senior Secondary.
Congratulations.
Teachers that had that gift. And so, are you aware of any methodologies like that?
So, to answer your question, to respond, you're absolutely 100% correct that yes, it does come down to teaching methodologies or how the being of the teacher and how that teacher interacts with the learners. And certainly in our vision, what we would love to see as coaches is that we impart coaching skills, because coaching is the language of empowerment. So it's empowering that student who has that potential to get straight A's. So, they can't make you get those straight A's, but they can certainly inspire you to want that for yourselves. So it's the language of empowerment. And in our vision, we would love for teachers to go through a life coaching curriculum, but designed for teachers, so specifically around education, so that learners, educators, principals are all speaking the same language.
And Robin Booth?
Yes.
Synergy also has got something.
Yes. Do you want to share? So Michelle is over here. So Michelle is the director of this project, the personal development life coaching project that I've been talking about.
But I'm not going to talk about that today. It's just something that is available at the moment. I don't know if you've heard of Robin Booth with his Sin Edgy. Sort of edgy spelt in edgy. And he's got some online teacher development programs available at the moment, and it's part of your continuing development points as well. So that's something that you could look at now. Yeah, so giving teachers different skills in order to bring out the best in children.
Like retreats and like camps for learners, just for an extensive process, instead of just the once off and then you go, and then it's like a message for that time. And in a point that if those very same one that used to bullies or be bullied to be part of the campaigns, just to express themselves of how they felt and what was the reason they were doing it, and using them as a basis so that others can look up to them. I think that's what can.
It's a lovely idea. Yeah, very powerful, a great idea. Yeah, I mean, we tons of ideas in this head, and also it comes down to budget, what schools will allow. Yeah, yes. There was a hand.
Very one teacher. Thanks for that.
Pleasure.
Teacher, and a lot of things happen. Put the children in the class. Once they go out during break, they play, and when they come in, teacher picked me up and my head knocked. Things like that. And if I think about it, it's like in some cases I see children don't have friends at home. They come and they want to play, hungry to play. They want to be outside of course. So I need a communication style to get them to think about in a positive way, like you said now. Thinking about not hurting, because I don't really know how to put it over to them. Other than saying, don't hurt each other, don't touch, don't do this. So I'm like a clown in the class. So a bit more of a calmer way of explaining to them.
Off the top of my head, so I'm hearing a lot of like, don't do this, don't. So turn that around. To telling what they should be doing. Maybe have a be kind policy of sorts in your classroom, and then I think also relax into the into the realization that it's not going to happen overnight, and that so it's just reinforcing it constantly, over a period of time. Thank you very much.